Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Open Mic Comedy Podcast. My name's Mark. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. This podcast is here for anybody on the open mic circuit, whether you're a comedian, a promoter, an MC, or a tutor. Hey, even if you're somebody that just loves watching comedy in pub basements and wants to watch the possible stars of the future. Today's episode is a bit of a special one because there's not just one, there's not just two, there's not three, there is four of us here in this room. As you can probably tell, we have episode 2, Kim Hope.
Hey.
Episode 3, Hasan Al-Habib.
Hello.
Episode 4, Jim Hooker. So who knows what this is going to entail, but let's see what happens. So, hello guys, how are you all doing?
Very well, thank you.
Very good, very good.
Happy to be here.
I've got to say, I peek behind the curtain. I've had a bit of a bad cough, but it's making me sound so sexy.
Yeah.
We might have to change the age rating of this this episode.
Every episode goes explicit.
Yeah,
just in case.
Oh,
Just
good,
in case.
good.
So yeah, feel free to swear. You've all done this before. You kind of know what this is all about. This is a catch up for everybody to see how your lives have developed since recording back in January of this year. Now it's June, coming up to July, heading in towards Edinburgh season, and all three guests, not me, are taking shows to Edinburgh. So we're going to be delving into a bit of that and see what's going on with all of that kind of stuff. So first of all, Kim, how's it been going? Miss G&B of the Year winner.
Wow.
Oh no, GMB All Stars. Thank you. I actually was tempted to bring the award and just pop it.
You should have done.
Because in the brief, it's like, oh, Hasan's done this and Jim's done that, and Kim's, yeah, she did Brighton. Anyway, how was that for you? Well, look, my life has really taken on a new meaning since winning my Sharp Trophy. It's very pointy and delicious. It's going well, actually. Actually, immediately after G&B, I did go to Australia for a month to not do comedy, but just to visit the family. So that was kind of nice. I've been to Brighton Fringe with the lovely Miss Kimberly Policella. Well, Mrs. P, as I like to call her, Mrs. Policella. And that was really great fun. That was actually a lot better than I had anticipated it would be, to be fair.
How did you, is that your first Brighton Fringe?
No,
Ooh.
it is actually my second Brighton Fringe.
We are learning today, people. We are learning.
Because I am older than time, I had in one of my previous incarnations, I had done a split bill at Brighton Fringe with another comedian in 2013. And it was we kind of struggled. And I think we did 5 days. We struggled. And I really wasn't sure what to expect this time. But it's just, I think it's 2013. So 11 years on with a different person and a different expectation. Like I had quite low expectations, a different venue and a different time during the Brighton Fringe because we went during school holidays. So there were people there. We had an audience from the first day, none of whom we flyered. And Kimberly was known to say, how did you find out about it? Because we thought, we're in the snug. This is a great hiding place. We had an incredible venue, an incredible people who run the venue. And the person, Half a Camel, the guy who runs Half a Camel, Ben, just worked really hard. But we found out that people were coming from the program listing.
Okay.
Just from the program listing. And when we wrote that program listing, we had no idea what the show was going to be. We hoped it would be a bit more double acty than it ended up being. We didn't have the image. We just had 2 individual pictures of ourselves doing stand-up. But that's where they went. And we had all these flyers made that I have in my home. 500 flyers. I think I've got 485 of them now. Excellent drink coasters.
You put stickers over them for Edinburgh.
Oh, God, no. I've actually had to do that. There was one year I did a show in Edinburgh back in the olden days, and I did it with
olden days.
This was before the Gilded Balloon on the Cowgate burned down. I honestly am ancient. This is why I don't do sun, because I will just desiccate. But we had a show on. It was on at the Peppermint Lounge at 5:15 via the Gilded Balloon. I don't think the Peppermint Lounge is still a venue anymore. And then we got changed to 7:30, and we were told it's a great time slot. All you have to do is amend the flyers, but it wasn't amended anywhere else. It wasn't in the program, nowhere else. And we would sit there. We were living in Leith. We would come in from Leith every day, sit on the Cowgate outside the former site of the Gilded Balloon, and hand change all of our flyers and then go and flyer for a show that nobody knew was on at that time anyway. So, yeah, I will never change a flyer by hand again, I think is the moral of that story. And I think I've spoken for quite enough time. I want to hear what these chaps are going to say.
You know what? I was just looking up desiccate.
Oh.
Completely dry.
Yeah.
The only context I have that is coconut.
Yeah.
You know, when you put it on ice
Yes.
cream. Yeah.
It's probably not the right word to use, but I just imagine, you know, how a vampire because they're real, when they go in the sun, they just go into powder, into coconut. They do go into
Turn
coconut.
into coconut, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah, but I had the same experience of flyering. I think we flyed for our show. I mean, we must have spent hundreds of pounds. I think at least £300 on flyers. I'd give out like 100. I remember up to 100, 150 flyers after a show. Probably gave out 800 plus flyers. And after every show, at the start, we'd ask who's here because of flyering. Not a single person.
Was that for Edinburgh?
No, that was in London. Always in London.
Okay.
Because in London, people aren't. I think also if people have seen you, because we were flying after shows, so people have seen you do 5-10 minutes, and then you're saying to them, "Come and see me do," and it was a split show, so like maximum 20, half an hour each. They're like, why? I can go see any number of hundreds of other comedians in London. You have to. Yeah, I think Edinburgh is kind of, I mean, not unique, but it's like the emphasis on flyering is so much greater there, I think, than anywhere else.
Yeah, I agree, because people are there to see shows, so it's how you get to engage with them in that amazingly loud noise that is just the Fringe. Like there's so much going on. Whereas London is like Brighton, because I've done a show at the Camden Fringe and flyering did me no good either. And Brighton is similar. People are there for holidays, to see their friends, to go and do things. So if they think, oh, I'm going to go to a show, it's not, because we flyed so many hen dos, it wasn't funny, and none of them showed up. Like, kind of relieved, but we were on at 4:45 in the afternoon, so probably not their time slot.
No, they'll be way too drunk. That's them finished.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings on to your show then, Hasan. Too Muslim, Too Furious.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's
Mecca Drift. You left out Mecca Drift.
Sorry.
Right.
Did the original one have a different name?
No, the original was just Too Muslim, Too Furious, and I think after the first one we added Mecca Drift.
Yeah.
The real fans. The real fans.
Fans of the genre.
Yeah.
How have you found creating that, and how's that all kind of developed and stuff? Because you've now done you've done more, 3, 4, 5 actual shows on it?
5, yes.
Five.
That's right, 5.
And you've got more coming up before you hit Bonnie Land of Scotland.
Yes. I think, to be honest, creating was pretty easy because I wanted to do a split hour, and I wanted it to be kind of Muslim themed, and I wanted it to be one guy, me, and I didn't want it to be 2 guys. So I was like, okay, I've got to pick a Muslim woman. There were like 3 on the circuit, and I just went to my first choice, which was Aisha, who I knew her barely, to be honest. I think we'd gigged once at a competition gig, and I was really impressed by her. And then actually in Edinburgh, we were in the same bar, which is not where you expect to find 2 Muslims. And we just got to, and I said to her, do you want to do this show? I was thinking about doing a show about us both being Muslim. She was like, yeah, that's great. And I remember actually speaking to someone and saying, this was before I had spoken to Aisha. I said, like, I'm thinking about doing a split hour. Do you think the best thing is to find the absolute funniest person, or to find someone that you work well with and who works really hard? And they immediately were like, the latter. And Aisha's just been so good. She's so organized, so hardworking, so driven. And yeah, that's just made my life so much easier and really, really improved the quality of the show, I think, and getting people in. So, and then the other thing that I think we kind of did by accident was come up with a really marketable name, because when you're, when people don't know who you are, like you are not a name brand, which is the vast majority of the circuit, then you cannot use your name as a reason for people to come to your show. So you'll see people do shows that are like just first name, last name, work in progress.
Yep.
And I'm like, the first name and last name is not a reason to come to your show, and the last bit, work in progress, is you saying these jokes aren't as good as they could be. So
Yeah.
why would I come to a show like that if I'm looking for stuff to do in London? Whereas Too Muslim, Too Furious, it's just like, it's just sort of intriguing a little bit. I think people want to know more, and it's like if someone is Muslim, they feel like, okay, I can immediately come to that, and if they're not, they feel like we kind of, there's something zany about us that might be interesting to hear from, and yeah, because when we did those shows, like I said, no one had come from flyering, everyone had come from the listing, the show listing. So yeah, I think it taught us a lot about, because like once you've got them in, that's it.
Yeah.
Like you have to put so much effort into getting them in, and once you've found a formula that works for that, then you can focus on actually writing jokes.
Yeah. But I think it's how you've managed to get it into one of the most major comedy clubs in London. How does that come about? In terms of, just go, I've got this idea, and they go, yeah, go for it. Or
Well, I mean, ultimately it came from like emailing them and saying, but, and I know no one really wants to hear this, I like,
now we do.
well, put it this way, like I did a gig there at Top Secret, like I want to say 22, like late 22, because an agent wanted to see me, and they were like, just tell them that I want to see you, they'll get you in. And they did. But It was like for 3 months in advance, but they got me in, did the gig, went really, really well. Never got booked there again for like a year. And they were saying to me, like, this is really, really good, we'll have you here all the time. Just never got booked there again for a year. And then I like had dinner with a really good friend from uni that was performing there all the time, and she emailed them and said, CC'd me, and she was like, Hasan's really good, get him like a work in progress slot. Within half an hour they emailed me back being like, what, give us a date.
wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you need to know people.
Who do I know?
Yeah, I mean, but Top Secret is kind of notorious for that. I think like West End gave us a date, which we'd known from, Liam is so good, like at West End. Have you guys performed there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I think with a lot of these things, to be honest, like if you've done like one show and you've sold tickets and you can prove that we've sold tickets, that really, really helps. Like marketing the show to these people that decide who does those hour slots. That really helps because, it needs to be, it's so weird thinking about comedy as a business, as about something about like selling a product.
Yeah.
But you need to be in that mode in order to get people to come to the show, because remarkably, people's like motivation when they're thinking of what am I going to do with my Saturday night is not support burgeoning comedic talent. They're thinking, I want to enjoy myself. So you need to convince them that they'll enjoy themselves doing this.
But since that moment, you've not stopped being on that stage, have you? You've appeared on quite a few bills and stuff. Because I heard Top Secret do their bookings basically on the day.
Yeah.
Don't they? So I guess when they come calling, you kind of, yeah, I'm doing it.
I text them like on the day that I can do it and be like, yeah, I'm free to, because you don't want to go there too often, because I've had once or twice at Top Secret people come up to me and say, oh, I saw you before, and I'm like, oh my God, have you? I thought there was like a you can only come here once policy. How dare you come here again? So yeah, I'm trying to like go there like only when I've got something really new to. And the other good thing about it is that when you've got something topical to say, because their social media setup is so good, and because they've got cameras that are even like recording the audience, like when that guy, like I was doing as you know, like I was doing a set, and a guy accused me of being racist, and like comes up to me on stage and starts shouting about, yeah, you know, I've had it with your racist jokes or whatever. I remember a couple of people came up to me and were like, "Oh, you stayed like remarkably calm." Especially knowing me, like I could lose my temper. Like they were like, "Oh, you stayed remarkably calm," and I was like, I could not believe my luck. I could not believe my luck. And people were coming up to me afterwards, being like, "Oh, was that a setup? Like, do you know him from mosque?" I was like, "I do not know this man from mosque."
I've seen the clip. There is no way he's been anywhere near a mosque other than to go to the local supermarket.
Yeah, I was like, mosque kitchen maybe, but definitely not. Definitely not the actual mosque. No, I just could not believe my luck, and I was like, everything is recorded. I was like, of all the comedy clubs for this to happen, thank God it's happened here, because they've got the setup for it and all that sort of stuff. So you want to go there when you've got something good to write about, something that's in the news that they put out the next day, and then hopefully you get some traction from whatever clip goes out.
So now taking it to Edinburgh, how's the show kind of developing?
It's a good question. I think the number one thing we wanted to do was we have like an intro at the beginning where we do a skit with the two of us both being on stage. Do you do that actually for your show?
No,
Kim?
we're on stage at the same time,
Yeah.
talking to the audience, handing over, like kind of bantering back and forward, and then to the audience. But there's no set script or skit.
Right.
Mm.
So it's audience interaction.
Yeah.
when you do- yeah. Yeah. So we do a bit of that. Also, we have like a maybe 6-7 minute bit that's pretty much scripted, and then some audience interaction. And that's basically our alternative to having an opening act. Because we figure let's try and make as much use of the time as we can, and also because with the show's called Too Muslim Too Furious, like it needs to be kind of Muslim branded. And as we've said already, there's like a huge number of acts that we can get to open for us.
Halal.
Yeah. Exactly. So really the previews, I feel ashamed saying this, but like I've done a preview where I've literally not done any new material, but I have written like a lot. We've written a lot for the intro, just to get the intro right.
Yeah.
So that when we go to Edinburgh, even if it is, 5 sort of like Edinburgh locals or like people that have nothing necessarily that much in common with us, and it's not a small crowd, they can still be warmed up by the intro. Like the intro, we want it to be as bulletproof as possible, so that when we do our 2025 after, like it's good. So I think we're at the stage now where it's good. It's got enough audience interaction. It's got enough like accessibility, the jokes, that it can function in Edinburgh. And now we can start thinking more about the actual material we're going to run.
So it's almost 3 shows in one.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. And I think we'll hopefully get a sense of, because like we might even, let's see how it goes, but like we might even do a few dates at post Fringe if it goes well. And I think if we were to do that, we would need to focus more on the intro, because that's kind of what's because I remember I did a show at uni where it was 3 of us and we were on stage at the beginning and I remember always like that was only 10 minutes of the show, but after the show it was the bit that people would always compliment, being like, "Oh, we really like the chemistry at the beginning."
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to do it more often, that's the bit that needs to be focused on. Whereas for now, it's really a means to an end of like getting us to run new material as stand-ups ourselves.
That's cool. Can I just ask, do you have a running order? Is it definitely one of you then the other, or are you swapping?
It's a good question. We are swapping, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think, to be honest, it's also a good measure of like how well the intros worked, and I think it's worked well enough in the sense that neither of us minds if we go first or not. But yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah, neither of us has ever minded that. I think that the major thing as well is that if you're going on first, you really don't want to take too long, because then the second person has a hard cutoff point.
Yeah.
So kind of being considerate, I guess, of your timing. But yeah, no, we alternate.
Yeah. Oh no, because that's what we're doing as well, and it actually makes it's a really nice test of like, okay, this worked well yesterday, but I was on second. So will it work when they're a little bit colder? Because we don't have that same. I mean, we just get their names and find out where they're from and do a little, make them feel safe. Because I think with Kimberly, she's quite a character, and I'm always wearing heels, so I kind of tower over them with a big ponytail, and they're like, "Who is this man in a woman's dress?" And they're scared of me, and so we're just trying to keep them calm You know,
That's what you
stop them
want.
from leaving. I'm standing in front of the exit the whole time as well.
Yeah.
I do want them calm, Jim. You're absolutely right.
You just want to keep them calm.
Yeah. But then to enjoy it. But yeah. So it's good. It kind of makes us both better at opening and closing. So nice.
Interesting.
After the airline style safety announcement.
Yes, indeed. The exits are now locked. That is a curtain, but it is locked.
If you don't like it, you're going to burn. Yeah.
So Jim's taking Pitch It Good. Come on, give us a little bit of background.
So I've never felt such imposter syndrome in all of my life. As I'm sitting here listening to two extremely good comedians who I've seen and good friends with, and I remember we were talking about the plan, what the plan was for Pitch It Good, and there was no plan. It was just us, me and Paul. We've known each other for 15, 16 years. We've always just got on and just thought this would be a really fun idea, a bit of silly Billy time in the evening, and then it just ends up with us taking this to Edinburgh. And it was, I think the decision for Edinburgh was kind of probably a little bit naive. We're very naive, had no idea what we're doing. So I did So You Think You're Funny semi-finals last year, and kept in touch with the Gilded Balloon, and they were very nice. Very helpful. And I'd say that to any comedians that are listening that are going to the So You Think You're Funny semi-finals, take advantage of every second, because it really does help you network, make sure you make friends with these institutions up there. Institutions. Yes, very good.
Very good.
Yeah, very good. There's gowns and hats, and they throw them up in the air at the end of the show. When it came, I emailed them and said, look, this is our podcast, and one of the creative directors actually follows the podcast. I said, we quite fancy taking it up. Like, what do we do? And she said, well, fill in this form. And then about a week later, we got, here's 3 dates for you. Yay. So I was like, oh, cool. Okay. So we're going to the Gilded Balloon. This is going to be good. And then suddenly there's health and safety forms and risk assessments and design.
Your reputation really precedes you, Jim.
Yeah, it was just, exactly. There was heavy pyrotechnics. I mean,
no one else got these films, did they?
Yeah.
I'm talking Cat 4 fireworks indoors, highly flammable. And so, and then we kind of realized that Paul, the co-presenter, has never stood on a stage. So we were like, okay, we need to fix this. So again, just every opportunity. I've done I did my comedy course like last year at the Museum of Comedy, and always kept in touch with them there. I always go down there for if there's like an event, or go down and speak to the staff there. Spoke to them, and they gave us an Edinburgh preview spot, which is on the 27th of July.
Yep.
And so that's going to be Paul's first outing on a stage, is going to be at the Museum of Comedy.
Wow.
And really, we've just been stealing from everybody, like stealing kindness. People like Kim, actually, who has given me so much advice. People like John Pape, who did some great voiceover work for us to make it sound like a product, more professional. So we're just living on naivety and kindness of everyone around us. But there's a bit of comfort in the idea is so simple that I don't think we can fuck it up. It's all it is a guest comes in, they pitch a movie on the spot, and we just derail it. And it's so simple. And we did think about doing some extra stuff for the live shows, like maybe having a voiceover in the background doing like live trailers.
Oh, okay.
We thought that could be quite funny, actually, but then again, it just takes away from the keep it simple. It's just going to be another distraction, another thing that could go wrong. We just want to keep it as it is. And just for those contacts, like agents and things like that are coming up to see the show, and just really, really looking forward to it. And I think, but the sad bit is, I think, as I said, I've not been really doing comedy for that long. The stand-ups had to take a little bit of a back seat, because you realise if you know, what is it? Is it Parks and Rec? You can't half-ass two things. You need to whole-ass one thing. So that's what we've been doing, just making sure the podcast is right. But taking the opportunity to write some new material that I like. I was about to say it's good. It might not be good. It's weird. But yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. Really, just went to So You Think You're Funny last year. Made some really good contacts, and we're at the Gilded Balloon, and that's it, really.
It's exciting.
Oh yeah, it's really exciting. I'm going to go up for a week and do some spots and whatnot. Actually, because I went up last year, the first time I've ever been to the Fringe. I only went for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I was so infused. I was like buzzing up there. I was like to friends who had shows. I was like, "Would you like me to fly you for you?" And they were like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Yeah, no problem." I'm walking around talking to people, saying, "Oh, you come to the show, you won't regret it. It's really good." And I was like, "This is great. Why do people complain about this?" So I just enjoyed every second of it, and I was like, "Well, I need to come back next year under my own steam and see what happens, really." And that's what's happening.
That's so exciting.
Wow.
It's exciting.
You do have really good. That's the thing that comes across most when you're listening, is that you guys clearly know each other a long time.
Yes.
And my other favorite podcast is another one where it's like two childhood friends speaking, and it's really impossible to mimic. You know, knowing each other that well. How did you guys know each other? Were you from?
And we met in university. Funnily enough, we both met in Edinburgh. Right, so we met on a rugby tour. I was on my placement year, which is, I don't know if they still do them anymore. It's a year in the middle of the degree where you pretend to work, and then you go back and finish the last year. And Paul had just started his, he was a fresher. He was on his first year, and we just kind of met each other, and we're just like instant like mates, and that's it. It's been like that for 16 years, and we've been talking about like for ages, when we just have the chat in the pub or a barbecue, just like this is actually quite interesting, and maybe someone would like to listen to this, which is a very narcissistic thing to say and a very drunk thing to say.
Yeah.
The original idea for the podcast is that we had years ago was I was going to call it Pubcast, where we read the newspaper, went to the pub and read the newspaper out in part of the podcast, recorded half the show, went to the pub, got drunk, came back, and then discussed all the things again.
Interesting.
And we thought, well, actually, no one likes to hear drunk people talk, especially sober people, so there'd have to be a 2 pint minimum before you listen to it. So there was that. And then Pitch It Good came from originally the Aristocrats joke, right? The Aristocrats joke, where it's a very vulgar, long joke where a comedian talks about basically it's a traveling family of show people who pitch a disgusting show, like awful. Like the idea is that the comedian comes up with the worst things they can think of, and how long they can go. I think Chevy Chase famously went for like 3 hours once at a party. And as like a PG version of that would be quite funny. Like just pitching a movie that doesn't exist yet, and we just kind of derail it and see what happens. But all the little chat that we do beforehand is that we purposely do not tell each other. We come up with a little reason why we, how we made the money. We don't know what that is, so it's a genuine little surprise for us. So it's all the reactions are real. We don't know what each other's going to say.
That's so interesting, because I always thought, uni rugby teams, it's just full of like misogyny and drinking, but actually it's just men wanting to talk about art. That's all it is.
Well, bit of creativity.
It really is amazing.
We went to a terrible university, by the way. It was in Staffordshire. The campus doesn't even exist anymore.
Wow.
But it was, actually, we were a very liberal rugby team, actually. It was very, very, very friendly talk.
And sorry, sir, the other thing I wanted to ask, have you seen any episodes of the Ricky Gervais podcast?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Have you seen the episode where they critique Carl's idea for a film?
No.
Yeah, it's like, for me, I think it's like one of a lot of like fans of it say it's their favorite episode. And I think it's so good they do it kind of twice. It's the only episode where they kind of repeat a theme. As you say, it's them, like this idea of derailing someone else's idea It's inherently funny because they're often so invested in what they're pitching. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Oh, I'm gonna give that a listen. And the thing is, every episode is completely different, and that's the really cool thing is that
that's true.
no two episodes are the same because the comedians all got different styles. They're different people. They come from different places. Some come from like a clowning background, and that comes out quite heavily. And it's just every episode is just completely different, which is. It's the same concept, the same DNA, but every episode kind of seems different.
What's going to be nice in Edinburgh is actually having the extra element of the audience in there feeding back live to you with the laughter and how that shapes the narrative of the film, if you will.
And we think that the guests are going to be really important for that.
Yeah.
So for our first one in the Museum of Comedy, we've got Luke Nixon. Those of you who've met Luke, he's very, very engaging with the audience. He's very good. So I've asked Luke to come on. And to help us out to save our bacon, and then we've got some nice guests, and we first confirmed one is already that we're getting all the marketing together is Carwyn, and Carwyn Blaney. He's extremely funny. He's going to be our first guest, and of course Carwyn's Carwyn. He's going to do a stellar job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He sees things that people don't see because in his episode of Pitch It Good, I was listening and laughing. And hang on. He saw that. That was right there, obviously, but he's got such an interesting comedic brain.
Yeah.
And he's such a good improviser as well as a writer. So that's going to be a brilliant one.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be good. And I drove down, I went down and did a gig in Bristol a few weeks ago, going past all the service stations that if you had listened to the episode, there's a crew of traveling jazz musicians who write jingles for service stations on the side. And I was singing the little jingles in my head as I was going down the M4. It was
that's brilliant.
That episode just keeps giving.
It does.
I think the there is one episode that really does stand out, and Kim, don't take offense, is the one of when you pitch a movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that is the best one.
We had a guest counsel on the day, and I was like, well, we've got the studio, it's booked. I'll do one.
Because it was based on Top Gun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Top Gun / Independence Day.
Yeah. I just remember,
/ The Mummy.
I just remember listening to that, and I tend a lot of the time I'll consume podcasts in bits, but that one it was just like, no, I've got to keep listening to it. And I was like on an exercise bike or something at the time, and I just kept going because I kept wanting to get to the end of it. And I just thought that was such a good episode, and it highlights the banter and the camaraderie between you and Paul.
Yeah,
perfectly.
Well, there is an episode where Paul pitched. It was the first when we thought, does this work? And we rented a room in the Theatre Deli in the Theatre Deli in Leadenhall Street.
Oh,
yeah. And it was a big room, and we stuck 2 microphones together and said, let's see what happens. Let's just record and see what happens. And Paul pitched a great movie that was just completely bonkers, and all of the jokes, like I've come up with some money, and the stupid reason for it, that was all that came up. It was there. It was invented there.
Yeah.
On episode 0. So the DNA from NNF episode 1 was in here with Mandeep Singh, who was my improv instructor at Hoopla.
Okay.
I was like, I need like a professional improviser to help save us, because we don't know what's going to happen when we introduce a third person into this. Is what people say to their marriages as well. It's all getting very
the divorced man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all getting very essential in the studio. So that's the story of the entire story of Pitch It Good. So to answer your question, it's coming to Edinburgh.
Yes, it sounds amazing. Yeah. So, kind of rewinding back to Hasan as such with the stuff you've been doing on Top Secret. And if anybody follows you on social media, you never put these up as reels or posts. They're always just stories. So they're always there for 24 hours and they're gone. You see some of the people you're on stage with. How? I mean, I can go through Al Murray, Paul Chowdhury, Andrew Mensah. The list can go on and on and on. How have you found that working with people that are so established in the industry, whereas you're fighting your way onto that establishment?
I think Well, I think best illustrated with a story of someone that I haven't gigged with, which is Andrew. You'll know, I think, does support for Ricky Gervais.
Yes.
And I was asking him about this, and he's saying how, like, with so it's, first of all, it works quite a weird way in that Ricky will open, and then the support act will do like 5-10 minutes, and then he'll close. So he's like saying, Andrew was saying like it's a very easy gig. But also he was saying like the amount of new material that he's trying to, and he always says to the act like you have to do new, like you have to do new to like push yourselves and challenge yourselves. And it was really just getting across just how hard. And like let's just be clear, I'm not a fan of Ricky Gervais' views on almost anything, but but it's the constant theme I've seen of like working very hard. I remember also like someone in the industry telling me that the two most important things are, in order to succeed in this industry, are one, working hard rather than talent, because it's the people that work the hardest that will succeed, and two, very well illustrated by yourself, is being nice to absolutely everyone, because you never know who's going to get you a gig, who's going to get you, in your case, a venue, like casting, audition, anything like that. And like I did last week, I did like the best paid gig I've ever done. And I turned up at the gig. I was kind of like surprised to have been asked to do it. And I turned up at the gig, and the first guy I see is like someone that I've gigged with at the most horrendous open mic night I've done in London. But he was such a great guy. His name's Ben. And like we really got on that night. And he mentioned something about like promoting his own gigs and saying like, at some point I'll get you on. And like there he was, like a year and a half later, in front of me at this like very fun gig that we did. So I think just seeing those principles reflected back, because so often these people are very nice.
Yep.
That's something else also. So it really kind of tries to make. And I think the other thing as well is that I've learned is that what you do in the green room at these gigs like is as important, if not more important, than what you do on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why like I've tried now to get into the habit of like, because I've never like, I almost never learned my set before. Like I'm always learning it en route on the bus or whatever. But when I'm at one of these gigs where there's like big name comedians, I really try and have it like properly memorized so that I can spend the time in the green room just talking and just like listening or being nice or like asking them questions. Now, like if a gig, especially if they like see me do the gig, I will ask for a quote. I'll say, can I put this quote for you, or can you suggest something, etc. And I know someone else, friend of mine, shout out Diesel, who says that this was, I found amazing. He like did a gig with some big name comedians, did badly, and afterwards the comedian was saying to him like, "Oh no, don't worry, like you're really good, etc., etc." And then he was like, "Oh, am I? Well, can I support you on tour then?" And they were like, "Yeah." They said, "Yeah." So I don't know if that tour date has happened yet, but I just thought, wow, that guy, that is, like you should. If they say to you like, "Oh, we think you were good," you could be like, "Yeah, prove it. Like, can I come support you on tour?" So that sort of stuff is, I think, the biggest takeaways from, and also the other thing I really. I can't remember if I told you this story before, but there is a promoter. I think the thing I'm saying is like you realize that comedians have all been through the same thing. They've all been through gigs that have gone really badly. They've all been through like the grind of doing hundreds of open mic nights or whatever. And this, you'll all know this promoter. I'm not going to say their name on this, but it was a story from Rob Beckett. Have I told you this story?
No, you haven't.
So Rob Beckett was like, he turns up to this gig. The promoter's a really dodgy guy. Rob Beckett turns up to the gig, and it's one of those where, like, as you walk in, you're immediately next to the stage, so everyone can kind of see you. So Rob Beckett walks in, and everyone, like the audience, is staring at him, and he's like smiling awkwardly. And then the promoter is also the MC, horrendous MC, and he says, Rob Beckett. The smile of a black man.
What?
and then Rob's like, and the worst thing is, because I'm smiling, it looks like I agree with this.
That's amazing.
Oh my god!
And I remember as well, like on the lineup, it was like 4 white comedians and me. And I remember Rob told the joke, or not the joke, told what happened, and like everyone else was kind of, and I was crying with laughter. I was absolutely, insane. But it's like all of them have had those experiences with. Sometimes it's the same people. Like I've gigged for that same promoter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of humbling, and also feels nice to feel like, oh, we've all been through this. All these like difficult experiences, everyone's been through, regardless of how successful they are now.
Yeah, I've only ever had like a real one interaction, I guess, with somebody that's established, and that was Andrew Mensah. I did the blackout for the first time, the one that didn't scar me. Was regular listeners will know. I was walking out, and every time I know.
Go on, show us the scar. Let's see the scar.
This podcast nearly didn't exist because of it. But I met Andrew doing the blackout for the first time. He wasn't the MC; he was just there mingling around, and he turned up sort of like halfway through, and I'd done my bit, and I'd been booted off for the 4.5 minutes or whatever, and I'd seen Andrew gig like 2 weeks beforehand, and there was an incident that happened in that, which was it was the late night show at Top Secret, so it was a little bit rowdy, and there was this woman sitting like in the tiered kind of seating, and there was a bloke behind who was rather pissed and feeling unwell, and ended up throwing up over her, and this whole commotion happened in this thing, and I saw Andrew at the blackout, and I just said, I did that whole thing where you look at somebody and go, hey, and I'm like, you have no idea. I know who you are, and you're looking at me blankly. And so I recounted that story. He's like, man, he said, you never saw the aftermath after the show. It went off and all of that. And we just chatted. And he was like, oh, you're here doing your things. I said, I've done my bit and stuff. And he said, oh, how's it going? I said, yeah, it's like 7th gig or something. He was like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I'm an idiot. That's why. And just had a little chat, picture, camaraderie. And he was such a nice guy just to give his time, and was never like, shoo, go away from me, little man, don't need to speak to you. And that was quite humbling. Being in that kind of environment.
I did a gig where I went on before Paul Tonkinson once, and I saw it. It was in the green room, and he wandered in. It was Paul, and I was like, oh, this is good. And he went, oh, hi. He was very nice. I said, oh, shook my hand. It was like, how long have you been going? I was like 7 months. How long have you been going? He went 35 years. And I was like, cool. Yeah, he was lovely. And I got I don't want to brag, so I'm not going to name people, but I got very kindly invited to an agency showcase, and there was some comedians who I love were there, and I was like, oh wow, this is cool. I'm having a couple of drinks with these comedians, who were all like super friendly and lovely, and then there was the guy there who was the booker from Live at the Apollo, and I was talking to him about. He was really annoyed with his new office chair because it was giving him a bad back, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, this is oh yeah." I was, I'm invested now. I'm like, you should try the IKEA Marcus. It's a good chair, Like I was sorted my back out, something good. And
now you're on.
Yeah. I'm only responsible for chairs. That's it. I'm replacing all of the chairs at the Apollo with IKEA Marcuses. IKEA are very pleased with me. Everyone's going to have a great back.
Lucas sat down at the Apollo.
Yay! There we go. Yeah, the reviews for that show are going to be, you know what? It was a terrible show, but my back is that was the most comfortable I've ever been at a show. But that was a really surreal thing. Like there was really like comedians who were giving me some really good advice, like gold dust.
Yeah.
And I had such a good time, and I came away from there, and I was just sat I didn't sleep for a day when I got home. But yeah, that was great. Just completely out of my depth. But then it was great, just great fun, great fun hanging out with these people, and kept in touch with a couple of them and stuff. But I'm not one to ask for advice or anything like that because I don't want to be a pain in the arse. Do you know what I mean? Like this guy who's still got training wheels on. He's contacting me asking for help. But it's just nice. It's nice to to meet these sorts of people, right?
Yeah.
You think you think not?
Well, I feel like you should do that because I think probably far fewer people do it than and I think also like the most successful comics, they often do that. They often ask people when they're coming up that are bigger than them for advice, because also like in this industry, no one teaches you how to do anything. You know, there's no guidebook for like this is how you get onto this show. This is how you get onto. Like I remember. Sakiza was, I heard her say once about how if you're not getting on a gig, turn up at the gig and ask them and say to them, please, can I get on this gig? How do I get on this gig? Or she'd be saying like how before every show, she'd turn up like half an hour early and be so chatty and talk and like be someone that people want to be around. Because I think also really great comedians, like it's nice to be asked for advice. It makes you feel like it's like a recognition of how well you must be doing that. Other people are doing that.
Well, I've done a couple of driver gigs.
Oh, nice.
Which, you know, so obviously we were talking about earlier, I got my car stolen. So I was like, oh, God, I can't do any driver gigs. But I've done a couple of driver gigs, which is really good because you get people who have been gigging for 25, 30 years and you're holding them hostage in your car, you know, and you're like, what, you know, and they give you very good, frank advice.
Yeah.
Like I've dropped jokes from my set that I love, but they're just like, that's not you. You've written that joke and you've put it in and kind of makes sense. And there's all, you know, it all comes down to the advice is always about authenticity, right? It's just always about that. It's like, we want to get to know you and this isn't you. It might sound funny but it's just out of whack from the rest of the set. And that's consistent. I should probably listen to it. But that was the advice I got given when I started doing these driver gigs, and it's like helped my stand up like immensely.
Yeah, I think authenticity, and it's the image you portray, isn't it, when you walk onto the stage? So if you come on in a nice new suit and you start talking about being downbeat and up against hard times, it doesn't fly.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to believe it.
Yeah.
Carl Wallace has a really good piece of advice for this. That if you're designing a character, right, you write down and you'd think about what they would wear, how they would sound. I said that very strong. Sound. I'm really trying not to cough. That's what's happening. Yeah, how they would sound. Yeah, just I'm a Texas hollow bar.
Oh, that's inauthentic. I'm sorry, Jim. We need to cut that.
It works though, doesn't it? It really works.
I'm drawn to you.
Little lady. So yeah, and he said he gave a really good bit of advice that if you were designing a character, how they look, how they sound, how they dress, you got to do that for you. You know, when you how do you look? How you want to be perceived? How does that all work? And I was like, oh yeah, that's really, you know, that makes sense. I don't know why I started on this little rabbit hole. Authenticity, of course. Yeah. So, but that was a really good bit of advice that I got early days. I think you received that advice at the same time.
I do believe it was everything but the gags.
I
the
was
workshop.
there.
You were there as well.
Yeah. Oh, we're having a little party.
Just
Rob Ash, Sally,
and I feel like I was there.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, there we go. That's very useful.
I created an IT teacher wearing corduroy and a little woolen tie and stuff like that, and that's still in my mind. I have this character that I won't go into details of it, not on here, because it might never see the light of day, but maybe.
Well, listen, you're wearing your Dutch football shirt, so maybe you should come on as Mark van Cox.
There is that. Unlike how I walked on the stage the other day, which was those of you that see me live, you know, occasionally I would walk on with a particular T-shirt with a particular "Not David Baddiel" slogan on the front of it. I walked onto the stage last Wednesday with 3 Lions playing in the background.
Nice.
And it kind of fitted because the football's on.
Nice.
You've been wanting to do that for ages. I know it. I know it. Good. Congratulations.
And it was.
God, you must kill at karaoke.
But one thing I couldn't work out was you can't pick that song from the start because it's too much of a long introduction.
Yeah.
So I picked it sort of like a bit way just before it gets going and everyone knows the theme tune and stuff. But then I thought, should I try and time it so that I get to the stage when David Baddiel's doing his, I'll put it in inverted quotes, singing part. And then I'm on the stage and I carry that bit on. So I haven't got to that bit yet to work out because timings and stuff. But maybe one day I'll do that in full.
Do you have some Dutch roots?
No, well, I have Dutch roots in that I worked for a company in Amsterdam for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
I love Holland.
Clogs,
Yeah.
tulips,
Tulips.
windmills,
No, I worked. The office was actually like 5 minutes.
stereotypes.
Not saying the letter G. Just
Being very direct and forthright.
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, the office was based sort of 5-minute walk away from the actual Ajax stadium. So I used to go to games every so often when I was over there. And I just don't know. I'm not a big international football fan, but I used to like collecting football shirts, and I started getting slowly back into that, and hence why I'm currently wearing a classic Dutch from, I think probably the 70s.
That shirt's not from the 70s.
No, but it's supposed to replicate what the 70s badge was and
Right.
the plainness of it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's not, because it's like Nike Aero Ready, which I don't think
Yeah,
was
no.
around in 75 or 76.
They were not Nike Aero ready. In 70s.
But one thing I did want to say was, listeners will realise that we currently have guest number episodes 2, 3, and 4 here. We are missing episode 1.
Yeah.
I know, Kim, please stop crying. So unfortunately, Chris Ali couldn't make it today because he's away for the weekend, enjoying his time away. However,
to me.
he's not completely away.
Oh,
So here we go. Here's from Chris.
he's a spectre.
Hello, fellow open micers. We're not quite comics yet, so calm yourself down. Sorry I couldn't be there today. Mark don't like black people. No, I'm joking, he's all right. My question for you is, I've just gone right into it because I hope Mark's kind of set that up. But yeah, my question for you is, when I started stand-up comedy, I'll be honest, I didn't really know kind of what I was getting myself into. You know, obviously you're hoping to go out there and get laughs and do well, but it's actually challenged me in a lot of ways that I didn't realise too. What ways does your natural personality help you in your stand-up comedy, do you think? And in what ways does it challenge you, which you think you need to improve on to kind of build on your stand-up comedy routines? I'm looking forward to hearing what you say.
Chris couldn't be with us today, so accepting the award on his behalf.
So come on then.
Such a good question.
Can anybody remember the question?
So you're saying about how's your personality helped, and
Yeah.
how's it also challenged you in terms of stand-up?
I'll say for me, those that knew me like from the age of probably 13 to 20-ish wouldn't recognise me now. In that stand-up has given, well, maybe it's like 25, 30. Stand-up has kind of given me free license to forget the past and just be what I want to be. Not saying what you see on stage isn't authentic. It is authentic, but it's not the under 30s mark that was there at one point.
Right.
So that's people that maybe from school one day would come and see, and they'd see me on stage and they wouldn't think it's the same person.
Interesting.
Yeah. Take that as I was bullied at school and I hated the wankers that did it. And now this is my time to be me and not feel like I was hamstrung by what I went through.
Wow, that's beautiful, really, that you've found this. Yeah, it's lovely.
But that's me kicking off.
Ooh.
The room is open.
Whoever'd like to share next.
Thanks, Chris. We got really deep pretty quick.
Hi, Kim, alcoholic. Guys, I actually think the way stand-up, I like being with people. I love engaging with people, chatting to people, making people laugh. Like I will try very hard to make the postman laugh whenever he drops parcels off at my day job. And I think that the world is quite a heavy place and everything is quite serious. So if we can just find the little bits of those little glimmers in the day to make us laugh, that is good. So what I like to do, so I feel like when I'm on stage, I'm even more excited because I get to talk to a group of people and try and find things that to make them laugh, or the observations I've had, try and get them out there and make them funny so that, you know, when my favorite thing is that see it, say it, sorted thing. because I'd heard that so many times, and I'd even used that once. I did see something that didn't look right, and I got in touch with the British Transport Police, who basically texted me back and said, "What do you expect us to do about it?" Sorted. So I just it sat with me for such a while, and I went, I just want to find a light way to get it out there. So now I'm on stage and I talk about it, and I just kind of talk about how I'm never off the phone. I'm constantly messaging them with different things that I've seen, but they're ridiculous things. And it just gets a good laugh. And then when people hear it on the train, they've said to me, "Oh, we always think of you," or "It always makes us laugh when we hear it." So it's just, those little, I don't know, I just like entertaining people and being clowny. And so stand-up helps me get that side of my personality out in a format where it's appropriate, because I sometimes do take people by surprise when I come up to them normally, in their day-to-day life and start messing around. But on the downside of it, because I am quite a social person, and I find the writing and the sitting at home isolated for any length of time quite difficult. Which is kind of why this podcast has helped me so much, because I remember listening to Jim's episode where he talked about having a mic in his home, like a mic on a stand. And I immediately went up, I pestered him until he told me all of his secrets and where he got them from.
We named it, Kim.
Yes, we did. We did name it. Yeah, best idea. When she was photoshopped into that photo. Yes, it meant that I could get up from my desk and actually take the mic out of the stand and play with it in that way. So this podcast has actually helped me get over that in that sense too, that kind of isolated way I felt. And again, I spoke to Hasan about this earlier. Hasan's episode, he said a few things that I felt like I was the only person who felt this way about certain aspects of the open mic circuit, competitions, gong shows, etc. And I went, well, maybe it is something I have to do. And then Hasan said something that just freed me from that. And so it's I find this, for that head that I have that doesn't like being on her own too much, this keeps me company in those times as well.
Yeah.
So okay, I've really gone on. But yes, this is my 1 hour show. We're recording it right now. So over to you guys.
So all of my material is stories from that have happened to me. I've had quite a bizarre life, really. I grew up in a working class family, so in a working class family, childhood divorce. My mum became an East End pub landlady, so we lived in a pub and had to help bring up my sister. And then we moved from East End of London to Surrey in Hampshire, which was a huge, huge, it was. I was like, what? There's trees here. This is crazy. Went to university, went and lived in Newcastle for a bit. I've, it's just been, and there's just weird stuff that's happened. And again, just like you, Kim, I need people about. I need people about, and for me to right, I do that. I just take the microphone, walk around, and just jot down anything that's kind of got a little bit of something, and then just build around that. But for me, the challenge was turning this from telling a pub story into performance stuff. So I had some weird little techniques that I would use to try and bring that to people. And first, I did a clown day that was run by a friend, and I was just going because I had nothing to do really on the Saturday. She's very funny. And one of the things it taught me to do was listen to the audience and to kind of ham up the facial expressions and those types of things.
Yeah.
I have the microphone in the living room, which is the same maker model that they have in the club. So I know the weight. I don't think about it. It's part of me. I put Post-its on the wall. So I tried to look at the left Post-it, the right Post-it, and always finish the joke in the middle. So I'm giving myself my own little drum roll.
Writing that down.
And I now practice with a metronome as well.
Yes.
So I'm like 90 odd beats per minute. Boom, boom. Punchline always hits at the right time. So you can speed it up, slow it down, but it always hits. So I take the stories and I tell them with the metronome. I'm looking at the thing, I hold the mic, and it just kind of comes together, and then I'm just ready to take out to the mics. But all the stories just come from they're almost real. You know, that's
Yeah.
they're almost real. Everything's happened. And I've tried to come up with like weird, bizarre stuff. I've tried to make it a little bit wacky. It just doesn't work. People just don't get it. So I think it's funny. It's like that's what privately goes on in my head when I'm looking at these situations. But if I just tell the story, like what actually happened, it's so silly that people, you know, people just like it. So
And that's the authenticity that you take on stage. Yeah. It's really happened to you.
So I'm probably more me on stage than I am off.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair.
I think I also think when you talk about these are things that happen to you and stuff like that, they're parts of it that for me make it easier to remember.
Yeah.
Because there is it might not be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but then there's 80% of truth in there, which then has the embellishment on top of that. But so long as you know you're going from A to B, you're not thinking of the next joke because it's more natural because you're going, oh, then I did this in your head.
Yeah, for sure.
And that kind of stuff. I think it just makes it's when you get like comedians that do one-liners and stuff like that. To me, that feels like it's a lot harder because there's so much more to remember.
Sure.
You watch somebody like Mark Rivlin, for example, and you just the amount of jokes that come out one after the other, and you're just like, I can't unless I could piece it together as a story. It would be so hard for me to constantly keep remembering it.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit jealous that I can't do that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's really hard to time a story and cut a story down. But if you've got a set amount of jokes, then you can put it in a set, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but then I'm completely naive about it. But yeah.
The timing stuff is really interesting. So wait, so you try and time it to what? What's your
So each
you said
bit
90 beats per minute, you said?
Yeah, like 90. I think it's Jimmy Carr talked about in his book.
Yeah.
He has a book and he talks about all great speakers speak at 92 beats per minute.
Yeah.
So I watched all my favorite stand-ups, you know, Jerry Seinfeld, Lee Evans, and even down to like actors from like some of my favorite comedy films like Airplane and The Court Jester from the 50s with Danny Kaye, and they all speak at 90 minutes, and you think, wow, this is a thing. So I just use it to time and slow myself down and speed myself up, and then and it works, and it sounds like a grandfather clock in the house as well, which makes me feel a little bit classy.
Not gonna lie, I downloaded the metronome app the minute you told me.
It's just another little thing, right? So it's another little thing in that arsenal to help.
Yeah, because I did Amanda Baker's course, who of course directed Jimmy Carr, and she's all about 92 beats per minute, and it made me realize how slow I'm going in my stand-up. I think it's really helped me, actually. Although I'm not good at it at all. I need to practice a lot and rehearse, but there's 92 beats per minute. It's when you watch people, you do really notice it and how common it is as well in like the best stand-ups.
So what I've done actually, I've got an app on my watch which is a metronome. So when I'm taking stuff out for the first time, it's doing that. It's flicking my wrist.
Yeah.
So it's new material. I'm not, I'm like, where's the ticks? And it's I can feel it. I can feel it on my wrist. Yeah. So
God, I'm actually,
that's the next thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is a real peek behind the technical curtain.
Yeah, I'm just insane. That's the problem. I've got like a weird, fixation on.
But it speaks to what Hasan said before about like, what is it? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. It's 95% working, and your work ethic really, really inspires me.
Yeah, and also the fact that you said you watched so many. I think that's something I need to work on. Is I don't watch enough comedy, and you learn so much from especially like the greats as well. Like, that really, really helps. And to be fair, also that's something. Also, Amanda really emphasized in her course. Shout out Amanda Baker's course. I highly recommend. Is that the idea that performance is not? She always says like performance is not natural. It's not natural to speak at 92 beats per minute. It takes so much work and so much rehearsal. All the movements of your body, the modulation of your voice, that's all stuff that needs to be thought about. And like, you need to rehearse. You need to spend hours and hours and hours rehearsing. And that's really, which I don't do. And I really, it's really emphasized to me how important that is to be getting the most. Because for me, I always used to think of stand-up as basically like you write the joke and then that's pretty much you're 90% of the way there. The performance, if the writing is good, the performance will take care of itself. but it's not. And I've always seen stand-up comedians that I'm thinking, I don't think this is that funny, but you're making a lot of people laugh.
Yeah.
And I realize it's because their performance is very, very, very good. And she actually said on the course, remember, she was like, if your performance is very good, you can actually get away with not. You can make a career out of not having particularly funny jokes if your performance is very, very good. So yeah, that's always been something, and because it's made me appreciate that it's like 50-50. It's not like you can have great writing and that'll be enough. Like you need to kind of value each accordingly. In terms of the question from Chris, so sad that Chris couldn't be here with us. Really good question. I think that I suffer from the fact that I think the strength comes in confidence. I feel quite confident when I go on stage. I always feel like when I'm going on stage, like my performance deserves to be laughed at. It's whether or not the circumstances are right. Like I was doing a gig last night in Bournemouth, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we got a couple of stag dudes in. We had a fight last week," and I was like, "Oh man," I felt so nervous in advance. But in terms of my own material, my own performance, I feel confident, and that's always been really helpful. But the negative I feel is that a lot of my jokes are very high status, and that's something that I've realized more and more. Is it's always, and I always found out what high status meant recently. It's like, if I understand correctly, it means like you are the normal one in the world you portray, and everyone else is like stupid, or like they're the punchline. Well, because they say something stupid. But if you're low status, you're the one saying stupid stuff that is funny, it's to be laughed at. And I was going through my set, and I was like, oh my god, the only like low status joke I can think of is when I say like people of color really appreciate it when people pronounce their names correctly. So I go up to the MC that pronounced my name correctly, and I say to her, "You know what? You are such a great person, Sayopan." And I realize now that maybe some of the reasons that like that joke tends to do so well is because it's like the first low status joke in such a long time.
Yeah.
It's been high status all the time. And I worry, and so I feel like my problem is I worry that I come across as like a bit of a know-it-all, a bit arrogant on stage, and it makes me maybe a little less likable, because I feel like being likable is like the hardest thing to teach for a comedian. It's so hard to be like, to like distill what is it that makes someone likable on stage, because if someone is likable, people want to laugh at their jokes.
Yeah.
And that's such a strong position to be like, someone wants to find you funny that's the dream, really.
I mean, actually, I've seen your performance in Camden, and I think I told you afterwards. I was like, you were just in control. I wanted to laugh because I felt like I was in safe hands. Like you were like extremely confident up there. You were a pair of safe hands. It was like, okay, he's going to entertain the room. And it made me just want to like, jokes were awful. No, obviously they were fantastic. But no, you had the room, and we wanted to come on that journey with you.
Because confidence like that will put the room at ease.
Yeah.
Like I can go out a bit too keen to make them like me, and I feel them kind of go, no. You see, you're overdoing it. You're overdoing it. So to come on in complete control, it is that thing. People just relax and go, right, this is going to be good.
Yeah. Especially at the beginning, isn't it? It's like so. That's why I think the worst gig I ever did, I messed up my opening joke, and it was just like, it was a tough room anyway. But when you mess up that opening joke, because there's no stronger sign of like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're doing, and like we don't need to pay any attention now. Yeah. Guess what? When you were saying, I don't know if the story you were saying about the joke that you're naming, like, do you want to tell the story?
Well, I do a bit where I try to do a comparison between how it's so ridiculous that I cannot remember booking the cinema for tomorrow, but I can name the starting 11 from a football team from 35 years ago.
I mean, I think that's a more valuable skill. But that's just me.
I
agree.
And I literally, I to prove the point on stage, I list every player from 1 to 11, and then put in little ditty bits about it.
Wow.
So I hand on heart, this is pure memory. This is not Wikipedia check. This is nothing. And I even go to the point with, I'm probably going to lose people. You might get the point is that I go like number 1 is number 2, number 3, number 4. Then I get to like number 10. I go, number 10 was Steve Bold, which is a really weird choice because Arsenal needed to score 2 goals, but they put an extra defender on the pitch. And number 11 was so-and-so. And that's kind of how that bit's working out. And it works very well sometimes, but sometimes it's trying to work out if it's too long.
Yeah.
And I've had, like I said, I've had it where I've gone through the whole 1 to 11 and I've had a big round of applause after. And then I've gone and I've still got the 2 substitutes were. And it adds to it. So it adds the more ridiculous nature to it. But then I do it another time and I get to like number 7 and I can see the crowd are like, yeah, we've got your point.
Yeah.
But there's comedy and obsession.
Yes.
I'd like to see you like become a little bit unhinged, like, yeah, oh, this is it. So he actually did really bad. I don't think he deserved that, but you know, whatever. Because it'd be interesting to see you get wound up about that obsession.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's good, Mark. Like there is real comedy in obsession.
Yeah.
There is something about because I saw a comedian recently. I can't remember what the bit, but it was like was it a song or something like that, or like a it was like a rap even. And I was watching it with another comedian, like off stage, like on a TV.
That's when you know you've made it.
No,
You have to watch it from another room on the TV.
I was watching it, and we were like, and the other comedian said to me, a friend of mine, he was like, "Oh, this bit, watch, it'll always get an applause break." And I was like, "Really? Like, I don't think it's that funny." But there's something about the completion of like a big task that makes people want to applaud. And even though they weren't laughing that much during the thing, and it got to the end, like clockwork, they all applauded, and I was like, "Wow, that's so cool." And I think that that bit has the capacity to do that. Once you like,
people will applaud you for remembering.
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate enough to have a couple of bits that all 90% of the time get applauses, but when they don't get applauses, it really throws you off.
Yeah.
So anybody that's seen me recently, and I talk about 27 years with one person, with my wife, usually there gets a round of applause. But then when it doesn't, it's like, so at what point do I get that round of applause? Is it 30 or is it 35? Or are you just a bunch of miserable bastards?
Well, so one of, what say, not one of my favourites, but one of the world's favourites is Larry David, right? So Larry David, writer of Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm, was a stand-up. And his entire stand-up was people weren't laughing at his jokes. So he just became completely unhinged and shouted at the audience for not laughing at his jokes. But then that was funny. That was the funny thing, that he just became so unhinged. And, the comics are at the side going, this is great. And they're like, no, he's actually losing it. And so there's weird stuff that comes out of people not laughing.
And that's the reason, I forgot, so that's the reason I brought it up, was that I feel like that, my general kind of rule is if someone doesn't laugh at something that I expected them to laugh at, then I usually just act like I didn't expect them to laugh at it anyway.
Yeah.
And I just carry on like it's no problem to me. Because when you pause and like show like, oh, something's gone wrong for me here, like I thought, that's when people start to lose confidence. But if you carry on, it's almost like if you carry on and be like, I was totally unfazed by that, or it was in the plan anyway, people are almost like, wow, like this guy is really, it's almost like, this guy's really good if he's just like not intimidated. Like, one of my favorite comedians on the set, probably actually my favorite comedian, is Jin Hao. Have you gigged with or met Jin Hao?
No.
Honestly, amazing comedian. And shout out Jin. He'll listen to this. I'm sure he'll listen to this. But Jin is so, and I watched a work in progress of his recently. He'll be at Edinburgh. We should let's do a reunion. We'll go to Jin's show. And I've never seen someone make it so clear to the audience, like it is immaterial to me whether you laugh or not. I'm here and I'm going to do this stuff and I'm going to talk about whatever I want. You can laugh and you can not laugh. It's fine. He didn't say any of this, but he just conveyed it with his performance. And it was so liberating for the audience, because the audience, I could feel like, didn't feel any pressure to be like, oh, we have to laugh for this to go well, or if we don't laugh, it's going to be awkward. Like, it was so freeing. And as a result, actually, everyone just laughed much more, I think. because they felt so safe. Like they never ever felt awkward about like, oh, this bit that Gin Improv just like didn't get a laugh or whatever. Oh, it's a show gonna go south now. Like no, it was always like we felt so safe in his hands and just so intrigued at what he was gonna say next.
I'm sure I've seen Gin at Beat the Blackout, and he just built this world where and it was this surreal. I felt like I was watching a Studio Ghibli film for a little bit, talking about a path through a forest, and it was so self-contained and so wonderful. It was almost like looking at a comedy snow globe. I cannot describe what.
That's a great way of describing his act. Yeah, comedy snow globe.
It was.
Get that on the Fringe poster. Comedy snow globe.
Kim Hope, who? Never mind.
4 snowflakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he got to about like 1 minute 47 seconds before I laughed. But people weren't even thinking about the time anymore. Yeah. They were just entranced. And it was one of the most, I can't even think, like mind-altering sets I've ever seen. So yeah, I can't, let's go in Edinburgh. Kids, come on.
Do it.
Mark, you coming?
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Open Mic Comedy Podcast. This is the end of part 1. If you're listening to this on day release, part 2 will be out in a few days' time. Enjoy. And I'll speak to you all very soon.